The coastal highway stretched like a black ribbon beneath a moonless sky, waves crashing against rocks far below where no one could hear them scream. At the edge of nowhere, a roadside cafe flickered with amber light, the kind of place truckers forgot and travelers avoided. But tonight, every man inside had stopped breathing. She arrived on a matte black motorcycle, helmet obscuring her face, leather jacket hugging shoulders that moved with predatory grace. When she removed that helmet, silence fell like a guillotine. Skin like burnished bronze, eyes darker than the ocean at midnight, braids cascading down her back like warrior's rope. The truckers looked away. The bartender's hands trembled. But Kim Minute-june, sitting alone in the corner booth, set down his whiskey and smiled. He didn't know what everyone else knew, and that single mistake would change everything. If you enjoy stories filled with secrets, power, and unforgettable romance, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Share your thoughts about the story as it unfolds, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. The cafe smelled of burnt coffee and diesel fuel. Kim Minute-june had stopped here by accident, a wrong turn off the main highway while scouting locations for his company's new coastal resort development. His silver Bentley looked absurd parked beside rusted pickup trucks and motorcycles that had seen better decades. But he didn't mind. Minute-june had learned long ago that the most interesting things happened in places where you didn't belong. He was 35 years old and worth more than most small nations. His tech conglomerate, Hanyul Industries, had fingers in everything from artificial intelligence to luxury real estate. Forbes called him Korea's most eligible billionaire. Business Insider called him the man who never loses. Both descriptions were accurate. What neither publication knew was that beneath his tailored suits and charity galas, Minute-june controlled a shadow network that had kept Korea's criminal underworld in careful balance for over a decade. He wasn't a crime lord. Not exactly. He was something more dangerous. A broker. A negotiator. A man who knew where everybody was buried because he'd helped dig some of the graves. But tonight, watching this mysterious woman walk toward the counter, Minute-june felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Curiosity. The cafe's other patrons had created an invisible perimeter around her. Two truckers who'd been playing cards abandoned their game. The bartender, a heavy-set man with prison tattoos crawling up his neck, served her with shaking hands. She ordered water. Just water. And when she turned to survey the room, her gaze swept past every man like they were furniture. Until she reached Minute-june. Their eyes met for exactly 3 seconds. Something electric passed between them, a recognition that had nothing to do with memory and everything to do with instinct. Then she looked away. Minute-june's smile widened. Challenge accepted. He rose from his booth, straightening his jacket, a casual gesture that cost more than most people's annual salary. The other men in the cafe watched him with expressions ranging from confusion to horror. The bartender actually shook his head. A warning. Minute-june ignored it. Traveling alone, he asked, sliding onto the stool beside her. Up close, she was even more stunning. Her skin glowed like she'd been kissed by African sun and Korean moonlight simultaneously. Her features were sharp, regal, the kind of face that belonged on currency or ancient sculptures. She didn't look at him. Yes. One word, delivered with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Dangerous, Minute-june said, signaling for another whiskey. This stretch of highway, especially at night. For whom? The question hung in the air. Minute-june laughed, a genuine sound that surprised even himself. I'm Kim Minute-june. I didn't ask. You were thinking it. Finally, she turned. Those dark eyes assessed him with unsettling thoroughness, cataloging everything from his Italian shoes to the subtle bulge where his shoulder holster sat beneath his jacket. You armed, she observed. Cautious. Rich. Comfortable. Used to getting what you want. Almost always. The corner of her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. Something more dangerous. And what do you want right now? Kim Minute-june. He leaned closer, close enough to smell the faint scent of jasmine beneath leather. Your name. Silence stretched between them. The cafe seemed to hold its breath. Adiz, she said finally. You can call me Adiz. It was a lie. Minute-june recognized lies the way sharks recognize blood in water. But he didn't challenge it. Not yet. Beautiful name, he said. It means king's daughter in Igbo, doesn't it? Her eyebrow rose. You speak Igbo. I speak enough of everything to be dangerous. Dangerous. She repeated the word like she was tasting it. Is that what you think you are? I think, Minute June said slowly, that I'd like to buy you dinner. Somewhere nicer than this. And I think, Adiz replied, rising from her stool, that you should be careful what you wish for. She dropped a bill on the counter, American currency, crisp and new, and walked toward the door. Minute June watched her go. He should have let her leave. Should have recognized the warnings that everyone else in this room had clearly understood. But Kim Minute June had never been good at letting things go. Tomorrow night, he called after her. There's a restaurant in the city. Myeongwol. Best Korean fusion in the country. 8 o'clock. She paused at the door. Didn't turn around. You're persistent. You're intriguing. Those aren't the same thing. No, Minute June agreed. But together, they're the beginning of something interesting. She pulled on her helmet without responding, and moments later, the roar of a motorcycle faded into the night. The bartender exhaled heavily. Mister, you have no idea what you just did. Minute June sipped his whiskey. Enlighten me. That woman, the bartender stopped, shook his head. You know what? Never mind. You'll find out soon enough, or you won't live long enough to find out anything. Cryptic, ominous. Minute June's smile never wavered. He loved a good mystery. Hours earlier, Queen Okafor stood on the deck of a cargo ship anchored 3 miles off the coast, watching dawn paint the horizon in shades of blood and gold. She was 31 years old and controlled an empire that spanned 3 continents. Her father, Emeka Okafor, had built the foundation, smuggling routes through West Africa that governments couldn't track and competitors couldn't survive. But when he died 5 years ago, shot by a rival who thought killing the king would end the kingdom, Queen had done something no one expected. She'd burned the rival's entire organization to ash. Personally, one by one, his lieutenants, his accountants, his soldiers, his allies. By the time she finished, every criminal enterprise from Lagos to Johannesburg knew her name. Not Queen, her birth name, but what it represented. The Iron Queen, the woman who turned her father's regional operation into an international empire. The woman who commanded armies without raising her voice. The woman whose face remained a mystery to everyone outside her innermost circle. The ship will dock in 4 hours, said the man standing 3 steps behind her. Victor Nkemelu, her right hand, her protector, her oldest friend. He was built like a fortress, scars mapping decades of violence across his dark skin. The cargo is secure. And our contact in Seoul. Confirmed. The Hanyul network remains cooperative. Queen turned. Hanyul. Minute June's company. Victor's expression flickered. You know him. Of him. Kim Minute June. The broker. Keeps the Seoul underworld civil. She paused. I've been curious. Curious enough to take this trip personally. Curious enough to see what kind of man builds an empire by keeping other empires from destroying each other. Victor's jaw tightened. He didn't like when Queen exposed herself unnecessarily. Her anonymity was her greatest asset. The fact that men feared a ghost more than they would fear a beautiful woman walking among them. The motorcycle was a risk, he said. The motorcycle was freedom. Queen returned her gaze to the horizon. I've been in boardrooms and bunkers for 3 months. I needed to feel the wind. And if someone recognized you. No one recognizes me, Victor. That's the point. Her voice softened. I'm a myth. A rumor. A name powerful men whisper when they want to frighten each other. Until you're not. The warning hung between them. Queen understood the risk. The moment her face became known, everything changed. How enemies could target her directly. Her allies might see weakness instead of mystery. But sometimes, the isolation of power became its own kind of prison. She wanted, just for one night, to be someone without a crown. I met someone, she said. Victor went very still. Met someone. At a roadside cafe. A man. Korean. Wealthy. Arrogant. A pause. Interesting. Did he recognize you? He recognized that I was beautiful. That's all. That's dangerous. Yes. Queen smiled, a rare expression that transformed her face from regal to radiant. It was. Victor studied her. In 15 years of service, he had never seen Queen Okafor smile about a man. She'd taken lovers occasionally, always carefully selected, always temporary, always people who understood the arrangement. But this was different. He could see it in her eyes. Who was he? Victor asked. Queen pulled a sleek tablet from her jacket and showed him the search results she'd compiled during the motorcycle ride back to the ship. Kim Minute-june. Forbes profiles. Business magazine covers. Charity events where he stood beside presidents and celebrities with practiced ease. And beneath the public persona, the classified intelligence her network had gathered over years. His shadow connections. His enforcement arm. The elegant violence that protected his interests. Kim Minute-june. Victor read. The annual broker. He looked up. You know he's not clean. I know he's powerful. And I know he asked me to dinner tomorrow night. You can't be serious. I rarely joke, Victor. He could discover who you are. He has resources, connections. Then I'll learn something about his intelligence capabilities. Queen took back the tablet. And about the man himself. Victor's hands curled into fists. You're the most powerful woman in the criminal world. You don't chase men. They chase you. He doesn't know who I am, Queen said quietly. He saw a woman on a motorcycle. A stranger. She paused. When was the last time anyone saw me as just a woman? The question had no answer, because the truth was, no one had seen Queen Okafor as just a woman since her father's blood dried on her hands. One dinner, Victor said finally, resignation heavy in his voice. But I'm positioning teams around the restaurant, and if anything feels wrong, then I'll handle it. Queen's voice hardened, the same way I've handled everything else. Victor bowed his head, because he knew, better than anyone, what Queen Okafor was capable of handling, and it terrified even him. The following evening, Myeonwol occupied the top floor of Seoul's most exclusive tower, a restaurant so prestigious that reservations required 6-month waiting lists and security clearances. Unless you were Kim Minute-june, then you simply owned part of the building. He arrived early, something he never did, wore his best charcoal suit, something he rarely considered, and checked his reflection 3 times in the elevator doors, something he would deny until death. What is wrong with you? He didn't have an answer, only knew that since the roadside cafe, he hadn't stopped thinking about the woman who called herself Adiz. Her calm, her mystery, the way she looked at him like she could see through every mask he'd ever worn. Most women tried to impress him. She'd seemed faintly amused by his existence. Minute-june found it absolutely intoxicating. The restaurant manager greeted him personally, leading him to the private table beside floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. Your guest, sir, should arrive shortly. And her preferences, dietary restrictions. I have no idea. Minute-june smiled. That's what makes this interesting. The manager retreated with professional discretion, and Minute-june settled in to wait. Tell us in the comments what you think Kim should do. Would you take this risk? Let us know. 8 o'clock came. 8:15. 8:30. His confidence began to crack. She's not coming. Of course she's not coming. You met her in a roadside cafe and expected. You looked disappointed. Her voice came from behind him. Minute-june turned and forgot how to breathe. She stood in the restaurant entrance wearing a dress the color of midnight wine, fabric flowing around her like liquid shadow. Her braids were pinned up now, revealing the elegant architecture of her neck. Gold jewelry glinted at her ears and wrists, subtle, expensive, ancient-looking. She looked like royalty. No, she looked like more than royalty. She looked like the woman kingdoms went to war over. I thought you weren't coming, Minute-june admitted. I thought about not coming. Adiz walked toward him with predatory grace, her heels clicking against marble floors. But then I realized I was curious too. About me. About whether you're actually as interesting as you think you are. She slid into the seat across from him, and suddenly the most exclusive restaurant in Seoul felt too small to contain them both. That's quite a dress, Minute-june said. That's quite a table, she replied, glancing at the view. Private. Romantic. clearly expensive. Her eyes met his. How many women have you brought here? None. Liar. I own part of this building. I've hosted business dinners here. But a date. He shook his head. Never. She studied him with those impossible eyes. Why me? Because you looked at me like I was ordinary. You're not ordinary. I haven't been ordinary since I was 17 years old. What happened when you were 17? Minute June's smile flickered. A shadow crossed his features, there and gone so quickly that most people would have missed it. Adiz didn't miss anything. A story for another dinner, he said. You're assuming there will be another dinner. I'm hoping. The sommelier approached with wine, a vintage that cost more than luxury cars, and the ritual of ordering began. Minute June suggested dishes. Adiz countered with preferences that revealed extensive knowledge of Korean cuisine. You've spent time in Korea before, Minute June observed. I've spent time in many places. For work. For expansion. He leaned forward. What kind of work requires expansion across multiple countries? Her smile was the kind that made men nervous. Import, export. The official answer. The only answer you will get tonight. The first course arrived, a delicate arrangement of raw fish and seasonal vegetables that looked more like art than food. They ate. They talked. They circled each other with words the way predators circled prey, except neither was quite sure who was hunting whom. Minute June told her about his childhood in poverty, his mother's death, his ruthless climb from nothing to everything. He told her edited truths and strategic vulnerabilities, the same performance he'd given countless investors and journalists. But somehow, with her, the performance kept slipping. He told her about his fear of hospitals, real. About his hatred of crowded spaces, real. About the nightmares that still haunted him from the things he'd done to survive, far too real. By the time dessert arrived, he'd revealed more to this stranger than he'd told his closest associates in years. You're good at this, Adiz said. At what? Making people trust you. She lifted her wine glass, studying the liquid's color, creating intimacy, drawing out secrets while appearing to share your own. Minute June went still. You think I'm manipulating you? I think we're both manipulating each other. Her eyes met his over the rim of the glass. The question is whether we're enjoying it. Are you? More than I expected. Heat flickered between them. Subtle, dangerous, impossible to ignore. I'd like to see you again, Minute June said. I'm not sure that's wise. Wisdom is overrated. Spoken like a man who's never faced real consequences. I've faced plenty of consequences. His voice dropped. I've just learned how to survive them. Something shifted in her expression. Recognition, perhaps. Understanding. 1 week, she said. I have business to conclude in Asia. After that, I return to Nigeria. 1 week, Minute June repeated. Then we'll have to make each moment count. She rose from the table, and he rose with her, instinct and etiquette combining into movement that felt almost choreographed. Dinner tomorrow, he asked. Dinner tomorrow. She walked toward the elevator without looking back. But just before the doors closed, she turned. And for the first time all evening, her expression softened. Be careful, Kim Minute June, she said quietly. I'm not what you think I am. The doors closed, and Minute June stood alone beside a table that still smelled like her perfume, wondering what exactly he'd gotten himself into. 3 days later, they dined together every night. A rooftop restaurant overlooking the Han River. A private room in an establishment that required passwords and patience. A midnight food market where Queen pretended to discover street food for the first time, eating tteokbokki from a paper cup while Minute June watched her with something dangerously close to adoration. Each night, they learned more about each other. Each night, the lies became harder to maintain. Tell me about your family, Minute June asked on the third evening, as they walked along the river path, bodyguards invisible but present in the shadows. Queen, still at ease to him, considered the question carefully. My father built everything I have, she said finally. He was a king in his own way. Respected, feared, loved by those who knew his heart. He died 5 years ago. I'm sorry. Don't be. He died the way he lived, fighting for what was his. She paused. I inherited his business, his responsibilities, his enemies. Minute June's hand found hers. The touch sent electricity sparking through both of them. And did you want them? He asked. The responsibilities. Want has nothing to do with power, Queen said. Power simply is. Either you claim it, or it claims someone else. You sound like someone who spent a lot of time thinking about power. I've spent my entire life thinking about power. She stopped walking, turning to face him. The power to protect. The power to destroy. The power to choose who lives and who dies. The words hung between them. Minute June should have been unsettled. Any normal man would have heard the darkness in those words and stepped back. Instead, he stepped closer. I think, he said quietly, that you've been alone in your power for a very long time. Her breath caught. No one had ever said that to her before. No one had ever understood. Minute June. You don't have to tell me everything. His hand rose to her face, fingers brushing her cheek with impossible gentleness. Not yet. Not until you're ready. But whatever you're hiding, whatever you think I can't handle. He paused. I've walked through fire more times than you know. I'm not easily burned. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was wrong. Dangerous. Every moment she spent with him was a moment she risked exposure, risked everything she'd built, risked the carefully constructed anonymity that kept her alive. But when she looked into his eyes, she didn't see an obstacle. She saw a mirror. 1 week, she whispered. You said we'd make each moment count. I remember. Then stop counting. She kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't hesitant. It was the kind of kiss that started wars and ended dynasties. Desperate, consuming, inevitable. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the world had shifted on its axis. Come back to my hotel, Queen said. At ease. I don't want to be wise tonight. Her voice shook slightly. The first vulnerability she'd allowed him to see. I don't want to think about tomorrow. I just want. What? You. He kissed her again, and the river kept flowing past them, indifferent to the empires that were about to collide. Like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. The following morning, Queen woke in the presidential suite of Seoul's most exclusive hotel, morning light streaming through curtains she didn't remember closing. Minute June was still asleep beside her, features softened by rest, looking younger and more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. They hadn't slept together, not in that way. They talked until 3 in the morning, shared secrets and silences, fallen asleep tangled in each other's arms like teenagers. It was, Queen realized, the most intimate night of her life. And it was built entirely on lies. Her phone buzzed. A coded message from Victor. Emergency. Compromised. Report immediately. Her blood ran cold. She slipped from the bed, dressed quickly, and activated the secure line on her secondary phone. Report. Victor's voice was tight with controlled fury. Chen Weilin, Macau's syndicate, has discovered your location. Queen's fingers tightened around the phone. How? We don't know yet, but he's mobilizing. He has 3 teams converging on Seoul as we speak. Chen Weilin, a name from her past, a man whose entire organization she'd dismantled when he tried to expand into her African territories. She'd spared his life as a calculated mercy. Apparently, he hadn't been grateful. Extraction. Ready on your command. But there's more. Victor hesitated. He's not just coming for you. He's discovered your connection to Kim Minute June. Queen's world tilted. Minute June has nothing to do with our operations. Chen doesn't care. He knows you've been seen with him. That's enough. Victor's voice hardened. He's planning to use Minute June to draw you out, or eliminate him as a message. Queen stared at the sleeping man in the bed. The man who made her laugh, who saw past her masks, who looked at her like she was a woman instead of a weapon. The man who had no idea he was about to die because of her. Mobilize full response, Queen commanded. I want Chen's teams eliminated before they reach the city. And Minute June. She should walk away. Disappear. Let Victor extract her while the man who charmed her slept peacefully unaware. It was the strategic choice. The safe choice. Protect him, she said instead. Whatever it takes. Queen, that's an order. She ended the call, turned back to the bedroom, and found Minute June standing in the doorway, fully dressed, with a gun pointed directly at her heart. Who the hell, he said quietly, are you? The air between them crystallized into ice. Queen didn't move, didn't reach for her own weapon, simply stood with ancient stillness, watching the man she'd begun to love point death at her chest. You heard. Enough. Minute June's gun hand was steady. His eyes were not. Who is Queen? Who is Victor? And what does any of this have to do with Chen Weilin? You know Chen. He tried to buy influence in Seoul 3 years ago. I shut him down. Minute June's jaw tightened. Cost me 2 good men. But his organization never recovered its foothold here. I assumed he'd given up. Chen never gives up. He waits. Plans. Attacks when you're vulnerable. And you know this how? Queen exhaled slowly. Because 5 years ago, I destroyed everything he'd spent his life building. Silence. Who are you? Minute June repeated. She met his eyes. My name is Queen Okafor. I am the head of the Okafor Syndicate. I control smuggling, weapons, and influence networks across Africa, Europe, and parts of Asia. The gun wavered. You. The Iron Queen. Yes. She smiled bitterly. The woman powerful men tell stories about to frighten each other. The ghost who topples empires. The myth who turned out to be very, very real. Minute June's face cycled through emotions. Shock, disbelief, anger, something that looked terrifyingly like hurt. You lied to me. I lied to protect myself. The same way you lie every day about who you really are. I never pretended to be someone I'm not. You pretend every moment. Queen's voice sharpened. The charming billionaire. The philanthropist. The self-made success story. But I know what you really are, Kim Minute June. I knew before I ever walked into that cafe. His gun lowered slightly. You knew who I was. I know everything about you. Your shadow network. Your enforcement arm. The blood on your hands that you wash away with charity galas and museum donations. Then why? Because I wanted to know if the man matched the myth. Her voice cracked. Because I wanted, just once, to meet someone who understood power without being destroyed by it. Because when you looked at me in that cafe, you saw a woman, not a weapon, and I have been a weapon for so long that I forgot what it felt like to be anything else. Tears she refused to shed burned behind her eyes. Minute June's arm dropped completely. The gun hung at his side, forgotten. Everything between us, he said. The dinners, the conversations. Last night. Real. Queen stepped toward him. The lies were about who I am. But what I felt, what I feel, that was never a lie. How am I supposed to believe you? You're not. She stopped an arm's length away. You're supposed to decide whether you can forgive me. Whether you can look at who I really am and still see the woman you held last night. Minute June stared at her. The Iron Queen. The most feared criminal figure in the African underworld. The woman who'd melted into his arms like she'd been waiting her whole life for someone safe to hold her. Chen is coming for us both, he said finally. Yes. Because of you. Yes. And you expect me to. What? Fight beside you? Trust you after everything? I expect nothing. Queen's voice steadied. But I'm asking. Not as the Iron Queen. Not as a syndicate head. As the woman who, for the first time in 5 years, woke up beside someone and felt something other than empty. The silence stretched. Have you ever met someone who completely changed your expectations? Let us know in the comments. Chen killed my sister, Minute June said quietly. Queen went still. 3 years ago, when he tried to expand into Seoul. She was supposed to be safe, tucked away in London, living a normal life. But Chen found her, used her as leverage. His voice hardened. I eliminated his operations here, but I never got justice. Never found him. He disappeared before I could finish it. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Minute June looked at her with eyes that had gone cold and focused. Help me kill him. The request hung between them. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. An alliance. Queen extended her hand. Together. Minute June took it. And somewhere in Seoul's shadows, assassins drew closer to their prey, unaware that the hunters had just become the hunted. 12 hours later, Chen Weilin arrived in Seoul with 30 men and a vendetta that had been sharpening for 5 years. He was 53 years old, scarred by the empire he'd lost, driven by hatred for the woman who'd taken everything from him. The Iron Queen had become his obsession, the ghost who'd slaughtered his organization and vanished before he could retaliate. But ghosts, eventually, became tangible, and when his intelligence network confirmed that the Iron Queen had been seen in Seoul, seen with a Korean businessman, behaving like a woman instead of a monster, Chen had known his moment had finally arrived. "The hotel is secured," his lieutenant reported. "But they're not inside." "Of course not." Chen smiled thinly. "She's too intelligent for that." "But the Korean, he has predictable patterns. Offices, residences, public appearances. Should we move on his assets?" "No, that would alert them too quickly." Chen's eyes glittered with cold anticipation. "We wait, watch, and when they separate, because eventually they will separate, we take him, alive. And the Queen, she'll come for him." Chen's smile widened. "She's been alone so long that she's forgotten how vulnerability works. But I remember, and I'm going to teach her again." Meanwhile, across the city, Queen and Minute-jun had established a war room in a secure facility beneath one of his industrial properties, a bunker designed for exactly this kind of scenario. Victor had arrived with a team of 12 of Queen's most trusted operatives, their presence filling the concrete space with contained violence. Chen has 3 teams. Victor briefed them, holographic displays illuminating the dim room. 4 to 2 confirmed personnel, military-grade weapons, local contacts providing intelligence. "His objective?" Minute-jun asked. "You." Victor's expression was unreadable. He knows he can't take Queen directly. She's too well protected, too unpredictable. "But you accessible, public, vulnerable." "I'm hardly vulnerable." "With respect," Victor interrupted, "you're exactly vulnerable. You have legitimate business interests, properties, schedules. We can protect Queen anywhere because her world is built for shadows. Your world is built for light." The assessment was accurate, and Minute-jun knew it. His power came from being seen, respected, integrated into legitimate society. Queen's power came from never being seen at all. "Then we use that," Queen said quietly. Everyone turned to her. Chen expects Minute-jun to be the weak point, the leverage, so we let him believe he's succeeding. Her eyes met Minute-jun's. "We give him a target, and when he reaches for it, we take his hand. You want me to be bait. I want you to be the trap." Minute-jun studied her, remembered the woman who'd kissed him by the river, the woman who'd trembled in his arms last night, revealing vulnerabilities she'd spent years hiding. She was asking him to trust her with his life. "After everything, what's the plan?" he asked. Queen smiled. It was a smile that had ended empires. The following evening, Kim Minute-jun attended the Seoul International Business Summit as scheduled, appearing in the grand ballroom of the Schiller Hotel in his finest black tuxedo, surrounded by the economic elite of a dozen countries. To any observer, he seemed unchanged, charming, magnetic, the perfect host moving through crowds with practiced grace. No one noticed the micro-earpiece hidden in his ear canal. No one noticed the subtle armor woven into his formal wear. No one noticed that every exit was covered by Queen's operatives, dressed as waiters and security personnel. "Target acquired," Victor's voice murmured in his ear. "Chen's team has eyes on you. 3rd floor observation room." Minute-jun smiled at a passing dignitary. "How many?" 8 inside the building. More outside. Timeline. "They are waiting for you to leave. Probably planning a vehicle intercept. Then let's make it easy for them." At precisely 10 p.m., Minute-jun made his apologies to the gathered elite and departed through the main entrance, where his car waited with calculated vulnerability. The night air was crisp. The city glittered around him. And 3 blocks away, an armored van began moving into position. The intercept happened exactly as predicted. Minute-jun's car turned onto a construction zone street, isolated, poorly lit, perfect for an ambush. The van appeared in front of them. A second vehicle blocked the way. Men emerged with military precision, masks, weapons, choreographed violence. His driver was pulled from the vehicle. Minute June raised his hands in calculated surrender, allowing them to drag him from the car and force him to his knees. "Kim Minute June," said the team leader, pressing a gun to his temple. "Mr. Chen sends his regards. I'm flattered by the attention. You'll be less flattered when we're finished with you." They zip-tied his hands, checked him for weapons, missed the military-grade tracker embedded beneath his skin. They loaded him into the van with efficient brutality, and as the vehicle began moving, Queen's voice filled his earpiece. "We have you. Stay calm. We're coming." 1 hour later, Chen Wei-lin waited in an abandoned warehouse on Seoul's industrial outskirts, watching his men drag Kim Minute-june through the entrance. The space had been prepared carefully: chairs for interrogation, equipment for persuasion, cameras to document the eventual transmission he planned to send the Iron Queen. "Mr. Kim." Chen circled his prey with theatrical satisfaction. "Do you know why you're here? Because you're too cowardly to face Queen directly." The blow came fast, Chen's fist connecting with Minute-june's jaw with practiced brutality. "Respect," Chen hissed. "Learn it quickly. You'll need it if you want to survive the night." Minute-june spat blood, smiled. "You have no idea what's about to happen to you." Bold words for a man in zip ties. Bold words for a man in a trap. Chen's eyes narrowed. "What?" The lights died. Complete darkness swallowed the warehouse. Then the screaming began. Queen moved through the shadows like the ghost her reputation claimed her to be. Silent, lethal, inevitable. Victor's team had breached through 3 entry points simultaneously, neutralizing perimeter guards before they could raise alarms. Inside, the darkness was absolute, punctuated only by muzzle flashes and the wet sounds of violence. Chen's men were well-trained, but they weren't prepared for ghosts. Queen found Minute-june in the center of the warehouse, still bound to his chair, surrounded by the bodies of guards who'd been cut down trying to use him as a shield. She knelt beside him, sliced his restraints with a blade that appeared from nowhere. "You came," he said. "Always." Around them, the battle continued, brief, brutal, decisive. By the time Queen helped Minute-june to his feet, it was already over. All except for Chen Wei-lin, kneeling in the center of the warehouse floor, surrounded by Victor and 4 operatives, guns trained on his skull. "Queen Okafor." Chen looked up at her with hatred and something that might have been admiration. Finally, the ghost made flesh. Chen Wei-lin. Queen stood before him, blood-spattered and radiant. The man who forgot what it meant to lose. "You took everything from me. You tried to take everything from me first." Her voice was ice. "My father's territories. My shipments. My people. You thought because I was young, because I was a woman, that I would be easy. Your father was weak. My father was a king." Queen's hand rose, and Victor placed a gun in her palm. "And I am what comes after kings." Chen stayed at the barrel, pointing at his face. "Kill me, then. Finish it." "No." The words surprised everyone, including Minute-june. "I'm not going to kill you, Chen." Queen lowered the weapon. "That would be mercy, and I don't believe in mercy for men like you." She turned to Victor. "Contact his remaining holdings. Every account, every property, every ally. Already done. Transfer everything to the Okafor Foundation. Education initiatives, medical facilities. The kind of legacy Chen will never have." Chen's face contorted with rage. "You can't. I already have." Queen looked down at him one final time. "You'll spend the rest of your life watching your empire become the schools and hospitals that train the people who'll forget you ever existed. That's not death, Chen. That's erasure." She walked away without looking back. Minute-june followed, stepping over bodies and through shadows, until they emerged into the night air together. The stars were bright. The city glittered in the distance. And somewhere behind them, a man who'd built his life on violence learned what it truly meant to lose. 3 days later, the crisis was over. Chen's remaining loyalists had scattered. His resources had been systematically dismantled. The threat that had brought Queen and Minute-june together had been comprehensively destroyed. But now they faced a different challenge. What came next? Queen stood on the rooftop of Minute June's penthouse, watching dawn break over Seoul, feeling the weight of decisions that could no longer be postponed. You're leaving. She didn't turn at the sound of his voice. I have to. My organization needs me. African needs me. And if I asked you to stay, then I'd have to choose between the empire I built and the man who makes me feel like more than an empire. Minute June moved to stand beside her. What if you didn't have to choose? That's not how power works. Maybe not. He turned to face her. But what if we built something new? What if the Korean broker and the African queen created something that didn't require choosing? A merger. A partnership. Alliance. Marriage. He paused. Whatever word makes you comfortable. Queen finally looked at him. You're proposing a business arrangement. I'm proposing a life. Silence stretched between them. You barely know me. I know you're the most terrifying woman I've ever met. I know you eat tteokbokki like you've never experienced flavor before. I know you cry in your sleep. Yes, I noticed. And you wake up reaching for someone who isn't there. His voice softened. I know that when you look at me, you don't see an asset or an obstacle. You see a man. And I know that when I look at you, I see the only woman who's ever made me want to stop running. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She didn't bother wiping them away. I have enemies. We'll destroy them together. I have obligations. We'll fulfill them together. I have scars you haven't seen yet. Darkness you can't imagine. Then we'll heal in the dark together. He reached for her hand. I'm not asking you to give up your crown, Queen. I'm asking you to let me stand beside your throne. She looked at their intertwined fingers, thought about 5 years of isolation, thought about a father's empire and a daughter's duty, thought about a roadside cafe and a man who was foolish enough to approach a ghost. Ask me again, she whispered. Ask you what? The question you really want to ask. Minute June smiled. The kind of smile that had been waiting behind every mask he'd ever worn. Queen Okafor, he said, will you marry me? She kissed him. Long. Deep. The kind of kiss that answered questions words couldn't touch. And when they finally broke apart, the sun had fully risen, painting Seoul in shades of gold. Yes, she said. 1 year later, the wedding was held in Lagos, a ceremony that made Korean tradition with Nigerian royalty, witnessed by figures from both legitimate society and the shadows that ran beneath it. Queen wore a gown of white and gold, designed by artisans who'd served 3 generations of her family. Minute June wore a traditional Korean hanbok, modified with African textiles, symbolizing the fusion of their worlds. Victor stood as her honor guard, eyes suspiciously bright. Minute June's remaining family, cousins and aunts who'd survived the violence of his past, watched from seats of honor. And when they exchanged vows, something shifted in the criminal underworld's balance of power. The Iron Queen was no longer alone. The Korean broker had found his equal. Together, they controlled networks spanning continents, influence that could topple governments and protect the vulnerable in equal measure. 5 years later, Queen stood on the balcony of their estate outside Seoul, watching their daughter play in the gardens below. Chiamaka Minute June, named for Queen's grandmother, was 4 years old and already displayed her mother's intelligence and her father's charm. She's fearless, Minute June observed, appearing beside her. Climbed the garden wall yesterday. Guards almost had heart attacks. She's ours. What did you expect? He laughed, wrapped his arms around her from behind. They'd built something extraordinary together. Not just empire, though their joint operations had become legendary, but family, home, the kind of life neither had dared to imagine. Victor called, Minute June said. The Singapore situation is handled. Casualties. Minimal. The consortium surrendered before it escalated. Good. Queen leaned back into his embrace. I'm tired of violence. The Iron Queen. Tired of violence. The Iron Queen is whoever I need to be. But hey, with you. She turned to face him. I'm just Queen. Your wife. Chiamaka's mother. A woman who finally stopped running. He kissed her forehead. I love you, he said. I know I don't say it enough. You say it every day, in every gesture, every protection, every moment you stand beside me instead of behind me. She smiled. You say it in languages I'm still learning to hear. Below them, Chiamaka squealed with delight, chasing butterflies through afternoon sunlight. And Kim Minute June, the broker who'd built empires from shadows, looked at the woman who'd terrified the criminal world and felt nothing but peace. I still remember that cafe, he said. The one where you tried to charm a dangerous stranger. The one where I met my wife. He pulled her closer. I looked at you and knew. Knew what? That my entire life had been leading to that moment. Every struggle, every loss, every victory. He paused. They were all just steps on the road that ended with you. Queen's eyes glistened. We should go soon, she said. The foundation gala starts at 7. I promised to make a speech about the new schools. The schools Chen's money built. The schools Chen's destruction made possible. She smiled darkly. He died last year, you know. Prison. Heart attack. I heard. I didn't feel anything. That's growth. She laughed, a sound that still made his heart stutter, even after all these years. Come on, she said, taking his hand. Let's go change the world a little more. They walked inside together, and somewhere, in the space between shadows and light, two empires continued to beat as one. 10 years later, the memorial stood on Nigerian soil, a marble structure honoring Emeka Okafor, the man who'd started everything. Queen visited every year on the anniversary of his death. But this year, she wasn't alone. Minute June stood beside her, hair now streaked with silver. Chiamaka, 14 and already showing signs of becoming more formidable than both parents combined, read a poem she'd written in 3 languages. Their twins, Emeka and June, age 6, played quietly nearby, watched by guards who'd long since become family. He would have liked you, Queen said to her husband. Your father. He would have tried to kill you first, but eventually, he would have approved. High praise. She took his hand. Thank you, she said. For what? For walking into that cafe. For seeing a woman instead of a weapon. For loving someone who'd forgotten what love felt like. Minute June squeezed her fingers. Thank you, he replied, for letting me try. The wind carried the scent of jasmine across the memorial grounds. Somewhere, a bird sang, and the Iron Queen, who had conquered empires, survived betrayals, and built a legacy that would outlive them all, leaned her head against her husband's shoulder and finally, completely, let herself rest. Where are you watching from today? We'd love to know. Drop your location in the comments and tell us what you thought of Queen and Minute June's story. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable tales of love, power, and redemption. Until next time, remember, the greatest empires aren't built on strength alone. They are built on the courage to love someone who shows you who you really are.